I was going to say, oh, hello there. I can't remember where that comes from. There's some show or something. So I wanted to show off my mug, my Crimson Empire mug, because today's story is the crossover story from the Crimson Empire Kickstarter campaign from last year. This mug was one of the things we created in that Kickstarter campaign. If you want your own, there's a link to my social media links, and there's a link from there to the merch store. But anyway, it's just kind of fun. Today I'm going to read A Sprinkle of Crimson, which is a short story that I wrote for that Kickstarter campaign. It was one of the stretch goals. I think it was when we hit $4,500, I agreed to write the crossover between the Space Janitor characters and the Crimson Empire characters. And that story, it took me a long time to figure it out. I started off down a different path, which actually is going to end up being the beginning of Colonial Explorer Core Book 5. I've written about 7 chapters of that so far, and I started with that piece that I wrote during the Kickstarter campaign. So that book will kind of explain why these two series seem to be completely separate, but how they're actually connected together. But I promised that I would write a Space Janitor crossover, and I know people really love Space Janitor, so they wanted to see Triana and Ty and the rest of the gang meet Tony and Quinn from Crimson Empire. And so I wrote this Christmas story. And the reason it's a Christmas story is my Space Janitor Christmas stories are probably better considered space fantasy than science fiction. They're still part of the Space Janitor universe, but once Christmas is involved, I kind of throw out all of the rules and I add a little bit of magic in there. And I was inspired by Janet Ivanovich. She writes the Stephanie Plum books, and she has a series of books called the Between the Numbers books, because the Stephanie Plum books are numbered. Each book has, 1 through, I think there's like 30 of them now. But she writes these short stories, these holiday stories that she calls Between the Numbers. They don't fit in to the series itself, but they're still the same characters. And so I thought that was a cool idea. It allows you a little more latitude as to following the rules that you've set up for your universe. And so my Christmas stories are all kind of that outside of the regular series magical kind of thing. And so this story definitely fits that, and it allowed me to take some liberties and bring those two groups of people together that I wasn't sure how I was going to make them connect. If you want a copy of the EPUB for this so you can read it yourself, it's available on my website for newsletter subscribers. So there's my plug to sign up for my newsletter, and you will be able to download a copy of this EPUB for your e-reader. Or you can just listen to me. So I'm going to read it to you now. A Sprinkle of Crimson, Chapter 1. Certain people have magic about them. I don't mean magic like wizards and sorceresses wield, but rather that feeling they inspire. For example, just seeing my husband, Tiberius O'Neill y Mendoza bin Tariq Reynolds, makes me feel like the world is a better place. He's my husband. I'm supposed to say that. But I've always gotten that feeling from him. Even when he was that mysterious security agent, I wasn't sure he even liked me. My friend Kara also makes me feel adventure is nearby, which is funny because we haven't had a lot of adventures together, at least not since we left the Techno-Inst. Oh, and that whole thing at Sierra Hotel, of course. But she sparks excitement, fun, and a little bit of trepidation just by showing up. Vanti, on the other hand, gives me a spurt of terror. Okay, terror might be a bit extreme, but I definitely feel wary around her, and with good reason. There are other people, though, who have actual magic, and one of them just stepped out of a float tube. The tall blond man pauses, scanning the large concourse. His gaze lands on me, and he heads this direction as if we had arranged to meet here, a smile spreading across his incredibly handsome face. As he approaches, his blue eyes twinkle, and a faint shadow of blonde beard becomes visible on his chiseled cheeks. Women nearby eye his broad shoulders and washboard abs and sigh. That last bit might be a bit of projection. He stops in front of me, arms outstretched. Triana! Scott Calvin. I rise from my bench beside the fountain on level 78 and brush the glittering faux snow from my pants. He envelops me in a warm hug that inspires visions of gingerbread cookies, hot cocoa, and peppermint candies in front of a cheerful fire. I suck in a breath of cinnamon molasses and chocolate and wonder if I can buy his cologne somewhere on station. but it's probably not a cologne. Scott Calvin always smells like Christmas. I step back. What are you doing on SK2? Or do you even know? In our previous encounters, Scott has been a bit vague on his reasons for his appearance. I need your help. Isn't that always why I'm here? He winks outrageously, as if this is a joke. Yeah, that is why you usually show up. Not that I mind. Helping SC always leaves me feeling better than before. Plus, I like him. What do you need? Help finding something? Not this time. He lifts a hand and rocks it side to side. Let me rephrase that. There may be some finding involved, but to start with, it's your negotiation skills I require. I cross my arms and frown. I am not particularly skilled in that area. Maybe you need my mother. He thinks for a moment, his gaze drifting off. I'm pretty sure he isn't looking at the tacky pink reindeer and sleigh hanging above the fountain. He shakes his head. Nope, it's definitely you. And Ty. He nods decisively, as if this has been confirmed. Yes, you and Ty. With Scott, you never know. Maybe the voices in his head agreed. Or maybe he has an integrated audio implant. I'm supposed to meet Ty. I glance at the chrono over the float tubes, currently configured to look like a giant cuckoo clock. Right about now, as a matter of fact. As I speak, the little door above the clock face opens and a huge holographic bird pops out at my face. And, thanks to the magic of holograms, into the face of every person standing in the concourse. A few people gasp, one screams, and the rest laugh. O'Neill appears at my side. Whoever programmed that bird should be brought up on charges. Most of these people are expecting it. In fact, they're here to see it. But there's always someone caught unaware. He tips his head towards the woman leaning against her companions, her face pale. They ease her onto another bench, and she smacks one of them on the arm. They don't seem too worried. I look around, but don't spot any medics responding. You wouldn't happen to know who engineered this, would you? O'Neill leans close. I put a hand on his chest, holding him off. Are you suggesting that I had something to do with it? I try to look innocent. I wasn't, but now I'm suspicious. It wasn't me. I grab his shirt and pull him in for a kiss, then release him. By the way, did you see Scott is here? O'Neill does a comic double take, then extends a fist to Bump. Sorry, Scott. Didn't see you there. See? Magic. The men exchange greetings and Scott repeats his request that we assist him. O'Neill doesn't even blink. Sure, we can help. What do you need? Officially, Scott Calvin is listed as a VIP in the SK2 databases. Someone so important, no one is allowed to know exactly who he is or what he does. As a result, everyone on the station treats him like the emperor of the galaxy. Kara and I know who he really is, and most people won't believe it, so let's stick with VVIP. We'll need to take a short trip. Scott turns towards the float tubes, and we fall in behind him. We take the tube down to level 40, the passenger docks. Where are we going? I hurry to catch up to Scott as he strides down Radial 4, then almost slam into him when he stops at the security gate. To the Reinsdyr. He waves a hand through the ID reader, his hollow ring flashing gold when it connects to the system and grants him access. O'Neill and I swipe our hands through the reader and our rings glow blue. See what I mean? Even my mother doesn't get a gold flash, and she's chair of the board of directors. Scott is special. We follow him down the transit arm. Generally, smaller ships dock closer to the station, leaving the larger end slots for the huge cruise ships. Beyond the transparent curve of the arm, the station's lights glow on the hulls of the docked ships. We pass a private yacht, a pair of small military transports, probably waiting on that admiral Mother met with this morning, and a mid-sized budget cruiser. Scott strides past all of these, moving with purpose. He stops at the very end of the arm, in front of the arched wall. This one is translucent rather than transparent, so this docked ship isn't visible. The Pleiades Cruise Line logo stretches over a large hatch. To the side, a cheesy-looking backdrop sags against the wall, waiting for the next round of cruise ship passengers to pose for photos. Scott waves his hollow ring again, with the same flash of gold, and the hatch pops. A gangplank, surrounded by a transparent tube, leads to the bright red Reinsdyr, its gold trim glinting under the lights. Scott pushes off, sailing through the zero-gravity tube to his ship. Come in and close the hatch. O'Neill and I grab the handles just outside the hatch, and he pulls it shut behind us. Motors whir, and the green light above turns red. Together we put our feet against the hatch and gently propel ourselves toward the ship. By the time we cross the short space, Scott has already opened the ship's airlock, and we slide in. He swings the hatch shut, waiting for the light to glow red, then grabs a handle. Gravity engaging in 10. O'Neill and I find handholds, then reorient our feet toward the deck. The artificial gravity kicks in slowly, giving us time to get our feet beneath us before we reach full mass. The internal indicator turns green, and the hatch to the ship pops open. Two very short people greet us with a musical chorus of "Hello!" Their voices are so high it almost makes my ears hurt. "Mary!" I knock knuckles with the woman I recognize from a previous visit to the station. "Good to see you again." She bobs a little and smiles, but doesn't say anything. Scott indicates the man beside her. This is Bernard. The man says hello again, then moves out of the way so we can join them in the ship. While Bernard and Scott disappear into the ship, Mary shows us to the bridge. Here, another very short person. Kara would argue they're elves, but I'm not going to assign labels. Named Judy remotely disconnects the ship from the station. She offers a jaunty farewell to the flight control center, then pilots the ship in an alarmingly offhand manner, as if the ship can take care of itself and she just needs to encourage it on occasion. "We've heard so much about you. Welcome to the Reinsdyr." She turns to face us, blithely ignoring the screens. O'Neill's eyes grow large as we dive toward the station, streaking past the windows of the lower levels at a velocity and proximity that should have activated the anti-meteor lasers. It should also have inspired a heated demand from flight control to course correct immediately, but the radio is strangely silent. The lights blink green. We're still connected to the comm system, but no one complains about our dangerous flyby. Judy and Mary wave out the front windows. As we rocket by, I'd swear I can see children jumping and waving back from the lower levels, but that's impossible. For one thing, we're moving too fast, and despite our proximity, we should be much too far away to see people. For another thing, I'm relatively certain the entire juvenile population of SK2 would not fill that many compartments. Chapter 2. Reinsdyr is designed on a model I've never seen before. Not that I'm a spaceship aficionado like my cousin Aaron, but I've traveled on a few luxury lots, and this one is something else. For one thing, there are reindeer living in the cargo hold. After our near miss of the space station, a feat that seemed to alarm only me and O'Neill, Judy takes us on a tour of the ship. She shows us the crew cabins behind the bridge, all neatly decorated for Christmas. "That one is the captain's." Judy giggles and Mary's eyes sparkle. "The other three are ours." We pass the open doors, peeking into the tidy, festive rooms. A strange optical illusion makes all of the spaces look short, as if they were designed for people only a meter tall. But when we step into them, there's plenty of headroom, even for O'Neill, who is just shy of 2 meters. Beyond the cabins, there are a series of doors marked storage. Then another at the rear that leads to a living compartment redolent of peppermint, molasses, cinnamon, and a faint tang of wood smoke. A long counter with a couple of auto kitchens take up the starboard wall, and a beautiful wood table and chairs in the center. Comfortable couches form a gathering space on the port side, and in the back, another door leads to a small multi-purpose room. Judy pushes one of the carved wood chairs closer to the table and waves a hand around the room. "You're welcome to use any of these rooms while you're traveling with us." "Where are we going?" O'Neill asks. Scott wasn't very clear on that. Judy giggles. "The captain frequently isn't. Sometimes I'm not sure he really knows, but the ship does." She pats the bulkhead as she leads the way out of the room. "Where do you want us to sleep?" I ask as we clatter down a wide stairway. In most ships, except the big cruisers, stairs are built in narrow and steep to use as little space as possible. This staircase curves around a large open space with a huge Christmas tree in the center. The gilded railings sparkle in the light of 1,000 flickering candles on the tree. "Those aren't real, are they?" "They can't be." O'Neill does a double take. "That would be a massive fire hazard anywhere, but on a ship? Insane." He pauses beside one of the many lamps affixed to the wall beside the staircase and touches the glass chimney enclosing the flame. "Ouch!" He stuffs his finger into his mouth. "There's no danger." Judy beams at the tree. I move closer, squinting at one of the candles. "Sure looks real to me." I reach toward the flame, then reconsider with a glance at my husband. "Come!" Judy's high, squeaky voice carries a tinge of command that has me swiveling away from the tree and trotting after her without question, which, if you know me, is odd. Beyond the tree, we pass under a high, curved arch with a sign carved to look like an unfurling ribbon. Golden letters spell out something on the shiny red, but my brain can't seem to decipher them. I flick the Translate app on my hollow ring and point it at the sign. Stable. Grabbing O'Neill's sleeve, I point at the sign. Is that an inspirational quote like, "Hey, everyone, be calm," or... My question dies as Judy swings open the gold-studded wood door and warm, musky air envelops us. Definitely animals. The scent is weirdly pleasant rather than nasty. At the far end, water splashes into a long trough. Sunlight streams down from large, impossible skylights in the ceiling. Bales of hay form a stack in the corner, and leather harnesses with bright golden bells hang from the hooks on the wall. Straw covers a stone floor, or what appears to be stone. Surely it can't be real. This is a spaceship. Mass is important, and stone is heavy. But the normal rules of physics don't seem to apply to the Reinsdyr. On each side of the wide central court, 4 half-height doors painted a deep green provide access to individual stalls. And from inside each stall, a deer stares at us. Their big eyes gleam, and their coats are thick and smooth, as if they've recently been brushed. They all have large racks, the tips of their antlers glittering as if they've been dipped in gold and silver. Judy stops at the center of the courtyard and turns in place, arms outstretched. Here's the team! As if in response to a command, the deer all make a deep grunting noise in their throats and bow their heads. The one in the second stall stomps his hoof against the stone floor, and the resulting clang rings through the room like a bell. O'Neill gives me an unreadable frown and swivels to look at the deer. Let me guess. Dancer, Dasher, Prancer. Don't be silly. Judy covers a giggle with her tiny hand. The OG reindeer are back home. This is Frost, Aurora, Blizzard, Mistletoe, Gumdrop, Joy, Buttons, and Eugene. Each one grunts and nods as she names them, except Eugene, who appears to be taking a nap. Nice to meet you. O'Neill bows to the room. When I grimace at him, he shrugs. Hi. I lift my hand in a tiny wave. Why are they here? The captain never travels without them. Judy claps and a bell rings. A mechanism whirs and feed pours out of a chute in each stall, filling the small bin within. The deer wait until Judy tells them to eat, then they turn away to munch their feed. With a satisfied nod, she slips between us and the door. Come. We leave the stable and cross the huge hall to another staircase. This one looks more like a typical ship's ladder, with open metal grating for treads and tight corners at the landings. We go down several more levels. At the bottom, a door on the left reads propulsion, and a passageway stretches out to the right. This is all cargo. Judy heads down the hall, pointing at each of the closed red and green doors as we pass, announcing the contents of the compartment. Toys, fruitcake, toys, wrapping paper, toys, bikes, lottery tickets, coal, hot cocoa, trains, toys, spaghetti. I stop. Spaghetti? Just kidding. That one is toys. She opens the door at the far end of the corridor. This way. We go up again, returning to the big hall through a door under the grand staircase. Scott stands beside the fireplace that I didn't notice before, drinking hot cocoa and staring moodily into the fire. How can there be a fireplace on a spaceship? I whisper to O'Neill. He shrugs. It's like the one in your mother's compartment on SK2. Realistic hologram, complete with heat and smells. I wrinkle my nose and move closer. This one looks real. I stare hard. The only way to tell is if you can spot the occasional artifact in the images. Weird pixelation, repetition, off colors. Even the really good holograms can't avoid it. But I'm not spotting any here. Scott looks up from the fire and smiles. The expression transforms his already handsome face, making him truly irresistible. Ty, Triana, I'm glad you're here. Where else would we be? O'Neill raises a brow. We can't exactly leave the ship. No, of course not. Scott laughed, but this isn't his usual merry chuckle. I just meant I'm glad you finished the tour because I need your help. But first, look who's with us. He turns and sweeps an arm out like a game show host, revealing the grand prize. Triana! My former roommate Kara squeals as she runs down the grand staircase. You're here! Scott said we'd pick you up, but I fell asleep after we left Kaku. Kara! We meet at the bottom of the steps, squeezing each other, then jumping up and down. I haven't seen Kara in months. We live together on SK2, but she's moved to Kaku permanently, and I don't get down there as often as I would like. How are you? How's Erko? And Freya? Erko is working, of course. She throws a comic glare at O'Neill, as if his former employees' work habits are his fault. And Freya's here somewhere. She looks around the room with a frown, as if she's misplaced her keys, not her child. A high-pitched squeal rings out, and Freya races out of the stables. She runs around the Christmas tree, then zigs and zags, darting between the adults as fast as her chubby little toddler legs will carry her. Crew members I haven't seen before dart after her, somehow herding her away from the fireplace and our group without actually coming between us. Elves are the best babysitters. Kara smiles complacently at the scene, then takes a mug Scott offers her. And they make excellent spiked cocoa. Elves? O'Neill asks faintly. Duh! Kara waves her free hand at the small group now tossing Freya back and forth like a beach ball. She doesn't appear to be at all concerned that her child is being hurled through the air over a stone floor by people barely bigger than children themselves. They all wear colorful clothing with tiny bells sewn in, soft ankle-high shoes with the tips curled up, and several of them sport pointy hats. I swear I catch a glimpse of pointed ears. Tiny people who work for Santa, Kara says. Elves. I glance at Scott, but he doesn't react to this statement. Is he finally admitting he is Santa Claus? What is it you needed help with, Sir Calvin? O'Neill accepts a steaming mug from our host. Scott lifts both hands in a charming shrug, then hands me a cup he wasn't holding a second ago. I'm not sure yet. I'll know when it happens. For now, make yourselves at home. I sip my beverage, hot chocolate with a thick layer of whipped cream, chocolate flakes, and peppermint stick. And a kick of spiced rum and butterscotch schnapps. Fantastic. So you don't know what you'll need us for, but you know you'll need us? O'Neill licks the whipped cream from his lip and gives the mug an appreciative frown. Is that cayenne? Just a touch, Scott grins. And yes, exactly, you'll know when I do. In the meantime, Judy will show you to your guest suite, although I don't think you'll need it. He turns and the small woman materializes at his side. Dinner will be in an hour in the dining hall. She flicks a hand over her shoulder, indicating a door I hadn't noticed before. At her gesture, it swings open, revealing a full, formal dining room similar to the one Mother has in every one of her houses. Except this one is cozy and warm rather than austere and intimidating. Follow me. Carrying our quickly disappearing drinks, we follow the woman. Never mind, I'm just going to own it. We follow the elf up the stairs to yet another door I hadn't noticed before. This one leads to a long hall that runs perpendicular to the corridor containing the crew's quarters, a feat that should not be possible on a ship this size. I move closer to O'Neill. This ship makes no sense. Is it bigger on the inside? He shrugs and sips his beverage. I've decided to stop asking questions. Just go with it. Judy waves her hollow ring-free hand at an access panel, and the door slides open. The impression of the scents of gingerbread and chocolate whisper out, wrapping me in a warm, cozy feeling. Inside, a pair of plush armchairs sit on either side of a small table, which holds a pair of champagne flutes and a bottle. A large bed with thick pillows and a coverlet in jewel-toned blue and white fills one corner of the compartment. Thick gray velvet curtains cover a wall, as if a bank of windows might be hidden behind them. On this ship, it's possible. An internal door leads to what looks like a state-of-the-art bathroom. Judy touches a tall, freestanding armoire against the wall between the bath and the corridor. There are clothes in here, but what you're wearing is fine for dinner. She points at the graceful clock, ticking quietly above yet another fireplace with a merrily crackling fire. Dinner is at 7. She slips out of the room with her characteristic giggle, and the door slides closed behind her. I look at my reflection in the huge mirror on the front of the big antique armoire. My green knit leggings have a white snowflake pattern. My bright red sweater features fuzzy Christmas tree ornaments and a cartoon reindeer with a big red nose that lights up. An angel's halo quivers over my usual frizzy red curls held in place by a white headband. I close my eyes. Is this cultural appropriation? O'Neill snorts out a laugh as he steps behind me to look over my shoulder at our reflection. He, of course, looks perfectly shiny. No, you're very festive, and no one seems to mind. Even the deer were okay with it. I spin, putting my hands on my hips. Really? Really? He pulls me in for a long, slow, delicious kiss. But if you want to see what Judy has in her magic closet. I break away and turn back to the armoire. Oh, yeah, I do. Chapter 3. Dinner is festive, of course. In addition to Kara and Erko, who somehow has magically gotten time off and arrived unnoticed on this ship on its way out of the system, Aaron, Vanti, and Elodie, with Apollo the cat in her massive purse, have joined us for dinner. Unlike O'Neill, I can't resist asking, how? Vanti raises a brow. How what? How'd you get here? Her lips twitch at the corners, just the tiniest indication that she's amused. Trade secret. Aaron smirks. We docked a few minutes ago. The Osta La Vista's tractor beam is locked onto the Reinsdyr, so they're essentially towing us. We took our shuttle over. At the mention of the word shuttle, a brief shadow seems to pass over the three newcomers, but they shake it off. Erin pulls out a chair at the dining table and seats Elodie. As to why, that I do not know. The captain has a sixth sense about things. Mary appears and gently directs people to their seats without appearing to direct them at all, and a way of bringing together the people needed for the job. When she finishes speaking, we're all in our seats. That's a beautiful dress, Triana. Elodie lifts her wineglass in toast. I look down at my silky green evening gown. I was afraid it might be a bit much, but it fits the decor. Plus, Kara, Elodie, and even Vanty are wearing equally elegant dresses. Thanks. It's all Judy. The other three women nod in agreement. Mary winks. She's very good at what she does, too. The captain hires the best. Oh, just call him Santa already. Kara pours herself another glass of wine. We all know it's him. No is a strong word, Vanty starts, but the double doors open and she breaks off. Scott appears in the doorway. Thank you all for coming tonight. He's wearing a white tuxedo with a shiny red vest beneath and a white diamond point bow tie. Yes, I had to learn to identify and tie them in school. Why? You'll have to ask my mother. We're going to make a slight detour this evening. Eugene isn't well. Scott waves toward the stable. Eugene? Vanty whispers. The reindeer, of course. I snicker at her expression. A bell rings, just a single, perfect, clear peal, followed by a male voice. Good evening, passengers. We will jump in 15 minutes. No preparations are required. Enjoy your meal. Every head in the room, except Mary's, snaps toward Scott. Erin says what we're all wondering. That's not possible. We are nowhere near the closest jump belt. I know, I just flew us here. A frown creases Scott's brow. I've never worried about jump belts. Vanty's back straightens. You jump wherever you want? That's not possible, Erin says again. I lean closer to O'Neill. I don't think that phrase means what he thinks it means. My husband smothers a laugh in a fake coughing fit. The jump belts aren't just for safety. Erin nods at Vanty as if he knows this is what she's thinking. They're set at the far edge of technological capabilities. Outside the belt, your ship's comm system can't receive data from the jump beacon quickly enough to calculate the coordinates properly. You can end up light years off your targeted destination. Scott lifts a glass of champagne and toast. I never know where I'm going, so that doesn't really matter. The ship gets me where I need to be. You just have to believe. The rest of us exchange a concerned look. Scott has always come across as a you are where you're supposed to be kind of guy, but this is taking faith to a whole new level. He's trusting his ship to choose his destination. The concept is way more nerve-wracking when you're on the ship with him. So, Vanty draws the word out in a dry tone. Where is the ship taking us? She darts a look at me, then away. Her hand casually brushes an invisible hair away from her face, then taps just below her ear. Under the edge of the table, I flick the audio implant connection on my hollow ring. Nothing happens. I put my hand on O'Neill's leg to get his attention, then try again. Nothing. Catching Vanty's eye, I give her a tiny head shake. We're so accustomed to communicating privately through our audio, I'm not sure she understands what I'm trying to say. I slide my hand up to touch my own ear and shake my head again. Her lips press together tightly. Thanks to my panicked attempt to call Vanty, I've missed Scott's response to her question. But based on the cacophony of exclamations around me, no one is happy with the answer. Scott pushes his chair back and stands. Please, my friends, there is no danger. We're going where we need to go, and we will get there safely. I guarantee it. Vanty also stands, her hands on her hips. Is that an assumption based on previous, highly risky behavior? It hasn't killed us before, so it must be safe is not my preferred method of vetting an activity. Erin snorts a little laugh. That sounds exactly like your preferred technique. Vanty frowns. No, I do my research. My process may appear to be random, but it's always based on careful evaluation of the options and years of experience. Scott smiles broadly. You and I are more alike than you think, Lindsay. Don't call me that. He lifts both hands in apologies. As you wish, Vanty. But please, sit. Enjoy a good meal. We are safe. At his words, the doors open and a line of bots glide into the room, each carrying a covered dish to a diner. Articulated arms extend from the bodies of the bots to place the dishes on the table, then whisk away the covers. A steamy cloud of roasted meat, fresh seafood, buttery potatoes, and yeasty bread wafts out, and my stomach growls in response. My plate is filled with my favorite foods, except there's no chocolate. But I'm sure that will be rectified later. Scott and I are simpatico when it comes to desserts. My napkin falls to the floor and I lean over to retrieve it. I catch a faint whiff of Brussels sprouts, one of my least favorite foods. Frowning, I sit upright to check my plate. None of the dreaded green orbs in sight, and the smell has dissipated too. O'Neill waves his fork at me and the smell returns. I haven't had these in years. I frown at the noxious green sphere on the tines of his utensil and push his hand away. The smell is gone. I pull his wrist toward me as he attempts to take a bite, and the aroma hits me again. This is crazy! Every time I move O'Neill's hand closer, I can smell the vegetable, but when I push it back toward him, I can't. Is there some kind of de-stenchifying barrier here? O'Neill switches his fork to his other hand and pops the offending food into his mouth with a grin and a shrug. Across the table, Aaron frowns and attempts his own experiments with a piece of cheese. Ugh, Limburger! Elodie pushes Aaron's arm away. Scott laughs and lifts a fork full of silvery fish. Judy insisted. She doesn't like my surströmming. That's fascinating. How's it done? Aaron waves his cheese again, and Elodie clamps a napkin to her nose. Let me guess. Vanti sits back in her chair, her arms crossed, her food untouched. You don't know. Scott smiles, shrugs, and eats more fish. The bell rings again and the voice announces, jump in 5, 4, 3, 2, now. The familiar wave-like wash rushes through me, although it runs on a completely different axis than I expect. I frown and point towards the stables. Is the bow of the ship that way? O'Neill shakes his head. I'm not sure this ship conforms to normal physics. Logic doesn't apply? Vanti leans forward, glaring at O'Neill as she points down the table at our host. Because we're with him? O'Neill raises both hands with a grin. Have you met Scott before? Trust me, this is the best way. You'll drive yourself crazy if you try to explain everything he does with logic. He's Santa! Kara raises her wine glass toward the head of the table. At her side, Eriko nods. Elodie picks up a fork and pokes at her noodle dish. Makes sense to me. This linguine smells delicious. Aaron and Vanti exchange a disturbed look, then both glare at me. I lift a hand. Don't pin this on me. I know him, but I don't try to explain him. And no offense, but I didn't invite you to join us. That was his idea. Judy says he has a knack for bringing together the right people. Obviously, we're going somewhere we'll need... I look around the room and point at Vanti, O'Neill, and Eriko. A couple of security specialists, an engineer, I indicate Aaron, then frown at Elodie and Kara, and a vid star and a stylist? Elodie beams at her daughter. I've always wanted us to work together. What about you? Vanti pokes a finger toward me. Why does he need you? He said something about negotiations. I take my fork and scoop up some crab. Or maybe one of his bots is going to break down. I guess we'll find out. But Ty is right. It's better to just let go of logic and believe. Believing is not my strong suit. Vanti stabs her fork into the single brown rectangular thing on her plate. Each of us was served foods we enjoy. Maybe protein bars really are her favorite. Chapter 4. After dinner, we moved to the comfortable chairs and sofa now grouped around the fireplace. The elves, I'm done tiptoeing around the word, bring us drinks and settle in with us. I glance at Bernard and Mary. Who's flying the ship? The ship flies itself, Judy says from behind me. That I actually believe. Aaron offers a recliner to Vanti, but she gives a firm headshake, standing at parade rest beside it. With a shrug, he drops into the big chair. A ship this advanced is going to have a sophisticated autopilot, maybe even an artificial intelligence. Elodie looks up from her spiked cocoa in surprise. You think? He shrugs. Vanti frowns and points at Scott. Does it have AI? Scott just smiles mysteriously. He gives Vanti a run for her money when it comes to being enigmatic, and I'm here for the competition. The bell rings again and the voice returns. It sounds human, but it could be AI or a pre-recorded audio. Destination reached. Proximity alert. Ship approaching. Scott flicks his fingers and a schematic hologram appears in the center of our cozy space. I don't know how he's projecting it, and I'm not sure how he activated it because he's not wearing a holoring. The three-dimensional display shows the Reinsdyr as a toy-like bright red spaceship in the center of the room. A blue line, solid behind and dashed in front, shows our path. Another ship, this one older and battered looking, approaches, with a bright green line showing their intercept course. The ship's name is Millennium Peregrine. Do you know them? Vanty asks, her eyes tracking from the approaching ship to Scott, then to each of the three elves. Are they a threat? No, and no. Scott leans back in his chair, his hands clasped over his washboard abs. Vanty's eyes narrow. If you don't know, how do you know? Scott's lips twitch, but he casts his sad puppy dog eyes at Vanty, shaking his head in dismay. You really need to learn to believe, Vanty. I believe in people I know, not strangers who act erratically. But do you? The question is way too personal for after-dinner conversation, but somehow the room feels like only Vanty and Scott are in it. The rest of us are removed, distant, observing without intruding or judging. Who do you trust in this room? Vanty's green eyes glare into Scott's warm blue gaze. I trust Grizz. She looks around at each of us. And Triana, usually. Aaron, mostly. Elodie, occasionally. The words come out as if dragged by an invisible force. Then believe in them. They believe in me. Scott smiles and the intensity pops. I look around in surprise. We didn't go anywhere, but I feel like I've missed something. Maybe I started to doze off. The fire is warm. Bing! The Peregrine is hailing. It's the same voice as before, using the same even tone. Who are these people? What system are we in? Vanty tries to manipulate the hologram, but she can't interact with it. The Peregrine belongs to the Marconi family. Scott rises and waves his hand. The hologram shifts, showing a system I don't recognize. We've jumped to the fringe of the Navon Commonwealth. The planet is Lunesco. Lunesco? Navon? O'Neill rises to walk around the room and view the hologram from another side. The system the CEC found last year? I thought travel between our systems and theirs is interdicted. His gaze travels across the display, then seems to catch on Scott. Never mind. I withdraw the question. Everyone draws breath to speak, but Scott holds up a finger and we all kind of freeze. Greetings, Peregrine. This is Scott Calvin from the Reinsdyr. How can we help you? How am I supposed to know? The grumpy female voice quavers as if its owner is tired. Then her image appears, replacing the special hologram. She's old and unrejuvenated, with iron-gray hair and heavy wrinkles. Her name appears beneath the image, Lou Marconi. You called me. We did? Scott smiles, unconcerned. Then I guess you can help us. Do you happen to have any peppermint schnapps? We just ran out. You aren't a duty collector, are you? You have to tell me if you are. Scott laughs. No, I don't serve in any official capacity. Do I look like a bean counter? That's how they get you, by looking innocuous. No offense. None taken. Where do we stand on the schnapps? Lou looks at the overhead as if she's trying to remember something. I have rum, whiskey, and sparkling rosé. Her lips curl on the last two words. I don't know why Liz picked up that stuff. No one wants bubbly pink wine. I love bubbly pink wine. Elodie raises her hand. Lou's hologram turns to face her. Of course you do. Hey, I know you. Elodie pats her hair in a self-satisfied smile. You might recognize me from my vid channel. No, that's not it. It'll come to me. Lou turns back to Scott. Sorry, no schnapps. I can have the rosé delivered by drone if you want it. Scott darts a look at Elodie, then shakes his head. I think we have more than enough already. Thanks for your kind offer. Lou harumphs. You might try Lunasco. Their distillery makes both flavors of schnapps, apple and peppermint. There are more than two. Scott cuts Aaron off. Thank you, Lou. Merry Christmas. Her eyes narrow, then she jerks her chin. Yeah, you too. Peregrine out. The woman dissolves and the special hologram returns. Scott clasps his hands together and beams at all of us. I guess we're headed to the planet. To get schnapps? Vanty says from beside the liquor trolley. I didn't see her move, but her stealth is legendary among the few people who know her. She lifts a bottle, sloshing the liquid within. This is peppermint schnapps. It's mostly full. Rising from his chair, Scott grins. Oops. He crosses the room and takes the bottle from Vanty. My mistake. But we're still going to Lunasco. Why? Banty props her fists on her hip, her face set. It's an expression I've seen before, and it always makes me question my choices. Scott doesn't blink. We're here. The planet has been suggested as a useful destination. That seems like serendipity to me. Banty's jaw drops for a microsecond. Then she taps the bottle in Scott's hand with a fingernail. By that logic, I should have a shot of schnapps because I picked it up and I have a glass handy. She waves at the glassware on the little cart. By all means. Scott snags one of the shot glasses and pours, then offers it to her. She glares at him for a moment, then grabs the glass and tosses the drink back. Swallowing, she gives a dramatic shudder. Ugh, that really needs some cocoa to cover the flavor. Done. He turns to the large carafe on the side table and pours a cup of cocoa for Banty. Anyone else? Without waiting for our responses, he fills mugs from the urn, then adds a shot of schnapps. Judy passes the cups out. O'Neill blows on his mug, sending a puff of cinnamon towards me. Puzzled, I sniff my own mug. Chocolate and peppermint, but no cinnamon. Let me try that. He holds the cup out to me and I take a sip. This is hot buttered rum. O'Neill nods. I like it much better than that. He points at my mug. But he poured it from the cocoa urn and added the peppermint. We turn to watch Scott as he disperses the last few drinks, all poured from the same carafe and flavored from the same clear bottle. Aaron accepts his mug and takes a sip. Basil? I like it. Scott catches my eye and smiles. Bing! Course set for Lunesco Main Field. We'll be landing in 20 minutes. You're going to land this thing? Aaron jumps up from his seat. We can take my shuttle to the surface instead. Much more cost-effective. Less stress on the ship. Judy takes Aaron's empty mug. You land all the time. Some nights we land more than others. She giggles. Let me guess. That's December 24th? Manty's voice is dry as she hands her still full mug to the little woman. I'm not telling. She giggles again, then hurries out of the room, carrying more cups than should be possible. Her clothing jingles as she goes. Scott. Aaron puts a hand on the bigger man's arm as he passes. Why are we here? Bernard appears beside Scott. To save Christmas. Chapter 5. We all stare at the tiny man. Elf. Whatever. Elodie asks the question none of the rest of us can manage to articulate. Save Christmas from what? Vanty crosses her arms and leans against the wall, distancing herself from the rest of us. O'Neill puts his empty mug on the small table beside our couch, then rises and leans against the wall next to her, whispering intently into her ear. I didn't think O'Neill had much experience with Scott, but he's gotten aboard the Calvin train very quickly. Bernard tugs on Scott's sleeve. The big blond man leans down to listen, then straightens. Will you all excuse me? Eugene is getting worse. He follows the little elf from the room. Kara gets to her feet. I'm tired, and I need to check on Freya. Willow said she went down about an hour ago. Judy appears at Kara's elbow. She played hard today, so I'm sure she'll sleep well. Kara yawns and reaches a hand to her husband, tugging him up from the couch. I'm sure she will. So will I. I'm sleeping for 2. What? Elodie launches out of her chair and surges through the hologram to her daughter. You're expecting again? When were you going to tell me? Have a heart, Laren. This is the first time I've seen you in months. We just found out last week. I was going to tell you tonight. Kara beams, her hand hovering over her invisible baby bump. A baby for Christmas! Elodie is practically dancing with excitement. Not really, Laren. Erko puts a hand on his mother-in-law's arm. Christmas is next week. The baby won't be here till next summer. But we know about the baby for Christmas. Freya must be so excited. She's barely 2. I'm not sure she really understands. The 3 of them wander toward the aft stairwell. Vanty watches them go, then turns to me. You already knew, didn't you? How'd you guess? By your total lack of squealing and jumping up and down? I smirk. Excellent deduction. She told me last week. Bing! Quinn Templeton on the line. Vanty pushes away from the wall. I'll get the big guy. I look at the ceiling like Scott does when he's responding to these announcements. Can we get a visual? Working. The ship is silent for a few seconds. Video contact requested. The hologram dissolves, reforming as the image of a middle-aged woman with brown hair and hazel eyes. She wears a plain black jacket, much like the ones Vanty wears, over a blue scoop-necked shirt. This is Quinn Templeton. Hi, I'm Triana Moore. I'm here on the Reinsdyr with Scott Calvin. He's stepped away for a moment. Nice work, Triana. Now she probably thinks Scott is in the bathroom. And these are my associates, Ty O'Neill and Aaron Kanduja. In my world, the name Kanduja would result in raised brows and whispered questions. This woman doesn't react at all. Scott was looking for some. Scott appears at my side as if by magic. The elves on his heels. Hello, Quinn. I'm Scott Calvin. That's Vanty. He waves across the room as the redhead stalks out of the stable. Did you meet everyone else? Yes? Good. Scott doesn't introduce the elves, and Quinn doesn't ask. Maybe they're off screen. Or maybe she assumes they aren't going to be part of the discussion. Or maybe Scott's magical ship has removed them from the video. Or maybe elves can't be seen on video. We have an unusual illness in our livestock, and we're looking for a local cure. You're transporting livestock? You aren't looking to unload that cargo here, are you? We don't have much call for pets. Quinn looks off camera for a moment. There's a beef ranch up north, but I don't think they're in the market. No, Scott waves both hands at her. We aren't selling. The deer are an integral part of the crew. But I need to get Eugene healthy before Friday. The 24th, Vanty whispers loudly. O'Neill knocks his elbow against her side and shakes his head. Quinn doesn't seem to notice. She's tapping at a keyboard, her brow furrowed. After a moment, she looks up. You aren't going to believe this. Yes, he will, Vanty whispers. But we have a cervine zoologist visiting. That's someone who specializes in deer. Who knew that was even a thing? She scratches her neck and rolls the ball beside her keyboard. Is this for real? This last part is addressed to someone off screen. Seriously? A hunting symposium at the homestead? But we don't have any real hunting here. After listening for a few moments, she turns back to Scott. I stand corrected. We have hunting in the mountains. She leans closer to the camera. I didn't even know there were mountains on Lunesco. Anyway, this guy might be able to help you, if you can't wait to get back to your own veterinarian. She frowns at the camera. You have deer on your ship, but you don't have a vet on staff? Or a special cervine med pod? Scott points at the hologram. That is a very astute observation. I need to hire a cervine expert. I wonder if your friend is available. Quinn waves both hands. I don't know this guy, but if you come down, I can probably set up an introduction. Perfect. We'll be down in 10 minutes. She looks confused by this, but shakes it off. Shall I send a vehicle to the landing field? Scott shakes his head. No need. We'll land at the homestead. Her jaw drops, but she recovers quickly. There's no landing field here. We don't need a field, just a big empty space, which doesn't seem to be a problem on Lunesco. See you soon. The hologram freezes on Quinn's shocked face, then disappears. The Reinsdyr lands in the middle of a vast, deserted plain. As we approach, I caught a glimpse of a long airfield and a single small building, then nothing until we settled beside the homestead. The blocky three-story building blocks our view of nothing. The planet, at least the part we flew over, appears to be mostly empty. When the ship settles to the dust, Aaron, Vanty, O'Neill, Scott, and I have gathered by the airlock. Scott has the ship pop both ends since we're on a non-hostile planet. Vanty had argued against this action, claiming that while the atmosphere might be safe, we didn't know about the inhabitants, but Scott overrode her suggestion. Before she can get ahead of him, Scott heads out into the sunlight. With an angry growl, Vanty follows him, then toggles her audio implant, which seems to be working again. Clear. I follow Aaron with O'Neill bringing up the rear. The wind whips dust into the air, stinging my eyes. I pull down the goggles Judy provided and slide them over my face. The big double doors on the building swing open and two people step out into the hot sun. The woman, Quinn, shades her eyes against the sun, then waves. Her companion says something, then strides across the empty dirt parking area towards us. Welcome to Lunesco. I'm Tony Bergen. This is Quinn Templeton. The wild wind whips the words away, making him almost impossible to hear. He offers a hand. After a funny open hand, closed fist exchange, Tony bumps Scott's knuckles. Come inside before you get sun or sand burn. We follow them into the entryway, a large foyer with a second set of double doors. The outer doors close and Quinn says, Shake. Vanty, O'Neill, Aaron, and I exchange a confused look, but Scott shakes himself all over like a dog. Our hosts do the same, so with a laughing shrug, I follow suit. Machinery roars to life and a vacuum sucks the dust away from our clothing. Inside, soft air, almost damp after the dry desert outside, tinged with the scents of flowers and growing things, hits our exposed skin. The tinkle of falling water underscores the lush green foliage hung from the walls. Highly polished planks of a lavender hue stretch across a vast lobby to a deep purple desk. Behind the desk, water trickles down a stone slab. A dark man with bright green eyes steps out from behind the vines. He bows and smiles, his teeth glinting with small crystals. Welcome to the homestead. I don't think they're checking in. Quinn raises her brows at us, then turns to the young man. They're just here to meet Robard. The animal guy? Isn't he out in the field today? Tony shakes his head. No, he stayed here. Something about a paper that wouldn't write itself. He shoots a smirk at Quinn. Apparently, we have unique species of deer-like animals here on Lunesco. Who knew? Quinn heads across the room to the stairs at the back. After I spoke with you, I contacted Dr. Woodsman. Yes, that's his real name. Come on up to the conference room. We climb to the second floor and cross the balcony that rings the lobby to the far side. Quinn opens a door and steps inside. Dr. Woodsman, our guests are here. When we enter, we're met by a short man wearing a thick red and white wool sweater despite the heat outside. The snowflake pattern resembles the one Scott wore earlier. Hello, you have deer? I smother a giggle, right to the point. Scott launches into a quick description of Eugene's symptoms, and the two men mutter wildlife-related things to each other. Aaron and O'Neill take seats at the other end of the long purple table, and Quinn, Tony, and I join them. Vanty stands by the door, her gaze tracking back and forth over everything like a security bot. We make small talk with our hosts. Neither of them are Lunesco natives. They're a bit cagey about their backgrounds, although we learn they met when Quinn was in the military and Tony worked for the government. As the men chat, Quinn pulls a rectangular device from her pocket and looks at the glass front. It lights up like an old-fashioned communications device. Aaron leans across the table. Is that a cell phone? I've read about them, but never expected to see one in use. She frowns. You don't have ComTabs? Where did you say you're from? She taps the screen and the image changes to words. I'm from Sally Ride. They're from SK2, in orbit around Kaku. At her non-committal grunt, he goes on. The Colonial Commonwealth? I'm not sure where that is. She looks up from her phone and catches Tony's eye and waits for a pause in conversation. I need to go into town. Tony frowns. Anything I can help with? She shakes her head. No, just a little programming glitch. Not something I can deal with remotely. She rises. Town? I push my chair back. Can I go with you? I didn't realize there's a town. I can do some shopping while you fix your thing, if you're coming back this way. She taps her lip with a finger, then shrugs. Sure, why not? There isn't a lot of shopping, but maybe you'll find something. There are some nice Darien wood trinkets at Phoebe's. Vanty and O'Neill exchange a look, and she peels away from the wall she had been leaning against. I'd like to go too. Tony raises a brow at O'Neill. You in or out? With a shrug, O'Neill pushes back his chair. May as well see this world. I'm not sure when we'll get back here. Remembering his comment about the system interdiction, I suppose he's right. We take our leave of Scott and Woodsman and troop down the stairs. The front desk is deserted this time, but a woman stands in the foyer when we push through the doors. At least I think it's a woman. She's wearing layered robes and goggles with a wide-brimmed hat on her braided hair. Quinn introduces us. This is Jessie, and she drives, well, everyone around here. How did she know you needed a ride? Vanty looks the woman over as if she's searching for a hidden transponder or something. Quinn gives Vanty a doubtful look. I texted her? Huh. Text. How quaint. The redhead pushes the door open, letting a blast of sand and heat into the foyer. Hey, warn us before you do that, I yell, but I'm not sure Vanty can hear me over the roar of the wind. We fight the gale and climb into Jessine's vehicle. It's a boxy, white craft with inflated rubber tires and 3 rows of seats inside. Quinn sits in the front next to the driver. The 3 men climb into the rear, and Vanty and I take the middle row. The vehicle beeps as it backs away from the building, then rattles across the dusty parking area to an equally dusty road. Is this electric? Aaron asks. Tony nods. We've got some bigger equipment with internal combustion engines, but petroleum is rare and expensive on Lunesco. We chat as Jessie drives, and Tony manages to get most of our backstories, except Vanty, of course. No one knows much about her, except O'Neill, and even he doesn't know everything. Let me get this straight. Quinn has twisted sideways in her seat to look at me. You ran away from your very comfortable life on a glitzy space station to learn to program, and then you went back to the same station to live in destitution? Her question makes me defensive. Destitution is a pretty harsh word. Bot minders make decent paychecks. And I like SK2. I just don't like being hemmed in by my mother's notion of propriety. Bot-minders make crap, Triana, O'Neill says. Remember how excited you were to move to that compartment with one bedroom? One. He looks at Quinn, then Tony. Tiny. Before that, she and Carol were sharing a single room. I understand wanting to get out from under a domineering mother, or mother-in-law. Quinn bites her lip, then whips out her cell phone and stares at it. I'm going to have to dump you guys and run. There's a bit of a situation. Vanty perks up at the last word. Situation doesn't sound good. Is there something we can help with? I'm good in a situation. That is true, O'Neill and I say together. Actually, I might be able to use Triana's help. Quinn raises her brows at me. Based on what Doug said, he might need a little out-of-the-box thinking on this. If you want out of the box, I can help, Vanty says. If you want out of the galaxy, that's more Triana's realm. Perfect. Jesse and change of plans. Get us to Doug's ASAP. You can take the boys back to town after you drop us off. Are you sure bringing outsiders into Doug's business is the best course of action, Quinn? Tony asks. Normally, I'd say no, but she shrugs. I have a feeling this is the right move. If Calvin vouches for them. You know Scott? I watch Quinn carefully as I ask the question. Not personally, but by reputation. If he trusts you, I trust you. She turns to face the front, ending the discussion. Another zarking belief bunny, Vanty shakes her head in disgust. Belief bunny? Well, I like that. I look out the window just as the world drops away. Chapter 6. It only feels and looks like the world drops away. Jesse and pilots the vehicle off the flat edge of the prairie, and we skid into a narrow road clinging to the side of a steep cliff. I suck in a gasp and peer out my window. The valley is deep, with a stretch of narrow, flat fields running east to west between the steep walls. The road zigzags down the side in a series of hairpin switchbacks. Jesse barely slows for the turns, and our rubber tires kick sprays of gravel over the edge at each corner. Conversation has ceased as the others hold their breath, the convenient handles clenched in death grips. Between the turns, the road runs straight along the side of the valley, with stunning views of the entire settlement. Buildings cluster near the bottom of this road and along the lowest switchbacks of a matching one up the other side. A river meanders through the center of the valley, feeding the crops and probably providing water to the residents. After 6 turns, our next straightaway runs between buildings. Jessian slows to a semi-reasonable pace, allowing the residents time to dive out of her path. On the uphill side of the road, we pass a bakery and several buildings that look residential. On the downhill side, the next row of houses is far enough below us that we can only see rooftop parking or gardens. 3 terrifying hairpins later, we shoot across the floor of the valley on a diagonal toward the river. Jessian takes the arched bridge at a speed that almost launches us into the air, and we hit the road with a thud. A few minutes later, we skid into another hairpin turn, this time heading up a steep paved path. At the top, she stops the vehicle, the front end nearly kissing the wood deck surrounding a low, long house. Doug Perez's place. Jessian opens her door with a flourish. Vanty slides the rear door open and staggers away from the vehicle, breathing deeply. Her face is serene as usual, but her chest rises and falls faster than normal. O'Neill looks jumpy, and Aaron is a bit green. I swallow hard, hoping my dinner won't make a repeat appearance. Tony perches on the seat nearest the door. You fellas staying here or heading into town? O'Neill shades his eyes and peers across the valley. From this height, the town is visible, but probably at least a click away. Can we walk back? Tony laughs. Jessian, you really need to take it easy on the tourists. I was taking it easy. Jessian slides her goggles to the top of her head, revealing laughing eyes. She was, Quinn confirms, but she looks at her comm tab and swears under her breath. I need to get inside. We all exchange startled looks, then hurry after her. Give me a call when you want to go back. Jessian waves and climbs into her van, backing it down the driveway at a terrifying speed. Ahead, dogs bay, big, deep barks that echo back from the high cliffs behind this little mesa. Quinn puts her fingers in her mouth and whistles shrilly. Doug, call off the dogs. It's me, and I brought company. An older man with a shiny bald head surrounded by a fringe of neatly trimmed gray hair appears on the deck beyond the small parking area, the pergola throwing slashes of shadow across his face. He raps out a command, and the 2 dogs, big, narrow-faced animals with huge pointed ears and stony glares, sit silently on each side of him. He utters another command and then strides forward to hug Quinn. Doug, this is Aaron, Triana, Vanty, and Ty. They came with Scott Calvin. Tony says the last name like it means something to all of them. Doug looks us over solemnly, then we do the fist and hand thing again. Clearly fist bumps are not their usual form of greeting, but I'm not sure what they're trying to do. Slap our hands? Maybe I'll try that next time. The man calls an order to his dogs, and they both lurch to their feet, then pace away, taking up positions at the corners of the deck, looking out. Come inside if you want to help. Tony slips past me to walk beside Doug. What's the problem? Doug glances over his shoulder. When our gazes meet, he gives me a long, hard look, then nods. They're from where now? Kaku, in the Colonial Commonwealth. Quinn waves her device at Doug. I texted their credentials to you. Our credentials? What is she talking about? I haven't shown my identification to anyone. Scott says they're good. Quinn pushes the device at the man again. And you trust Scott? Doug stops at the door and turns to look at the rest of us. Quinn and Tony exchange a look, then they both nod at the same time. Yes. Come inside. He leads us into a large living room and sets up a set of stairs set into the right wall. The treads and railing are the same purple wood as back at the homestead. It must be a local product. S Corp would love to get the inside track on importing this stuff. I trigger my audio and call O'Neill. What do you think about the purple wood? Looks rare. I suspect it would fetch a nice price back home. Agreed. Look at me being all adulty and mercenary. Your mother would be proud. Aaron joins the conversation. I've got dibs on the wood import. Too late. I flip a glare over my shoulder at him as we traipse up the steps. Already called it. Doesn't count if I don't hear it. The la 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 defense is not valid. I terminate the call as we reach the top of the steps. We follow Doug into a sitting room and wait while he opens a narrow door. I originally hid the entrance in my closet, so it's a little awkward to get into. He says this as if it's completely sensible. The hiding place is not nearly as clever as the entrance to my mother's safe room on Kaku. Doug steps into the narrow space and opens a door at the rear. We have to duck to get into the brightly lit room. As I pass through the small entry, I notice a few coats pushed to the side on the hanger bar. I suppose if they were evenly spread in front of the door, they'd provide some camouflage. Inside, the place looks like an ancient TV command center. Large, chunky cupboards with keyboards and slim monitors fill the room. Lights blink on consoles. Two young people work at one of the computer stations, their heads close together as they peer at the monitor. High windows let in indirect sunlight, and a huge animal stretched across the sill looks up as we enter. Sachel. Quinn raises her brows as she looks up at the creature. Bright eyes regard each of us in turn. Then the animal puts her head down and goes to sleep. Quinn turns back to us. You passed that test, too. My eyes dart from Quinn to the creature, a feline of some kind, to Tony. Test? Tony's lips twitch. If the Ka'at approves, you're in. I'm not sure why she couldn't have met us out front, though. What if they got all the way inside and turned out to be untrustworthy? No one answers. After a second, Tony and Quinn both laugh. Tony claps O'Neill on the back. She read you while you were still outside. Read? O'Neill shifts uneasily from foot to foot. She can tell if people have good intentions. Tony turns back to Doug. Now that everyone is double vetted, why don't you tell us what's going on? The interns can show you. Doug grunts and gestures at the two people at the computer. The man and woman get up, leaving the bench seat empty. We received an unauthorized launch request, the man says. What? Quinn throws herself into the seat and taps at the buttons on the keyboard. The orbit blaster? When? From where? The man leans over her shoulder and pokes a button and then points. Vanty strolls closer to the trio. This looks like the setup they had on Layway. Keyboards and scrolling balls. No audio input. Quinn frowns over her shoulder but shakes off the comment to focus on the younger pair. You didn't tell me they were launch commands, just unauthorized communications. We didn't realize what they were trying to do at first. The young woman wrings her hands as she speaks, bouncing on the balls of her feet. We sequestered it, of course, but we had to translate the code. Triana, would you like to take a look? Quinn glances at me, then the others. And Aaron, maybe? Aaron strolls closer. How'd you know I might understand this? Scott sent us your credentials. Vanty might be able to help too. Quinn smiles at the redhead, who doesn't smile back. What credentials? Vanty crooks her fingers at Quinn in a gimme motion. Quinn looks surprised. I'm not sure how to interface with your system. She frowns at Vanty. What kind of device do you use? Vanty flicks her hollow ring and brings up the basic comm program. Triana, can you set up an interface? Sure. I spot an old but comfortable looking couch and drop into it, opening my own comm program. Let me see what they got. What do you want us to do? Tony gestures to himself and O'Neill. Quinn smirks. Make dinner. Once we get the interface installed, connecting our hollow rings to Doug's planetary defense system is easy. Quinn watches everything we do, undoubtedly trying to ensure we aren't installing a backdoor or dangerous code. But thanks to the Ka'at's approval, the precautions feel perfunctory. As we work, several more launch requests appear in the system. It automatically squashes each one and shuts it off to a sequestered container. Aaron, why don't you try to trace those back to their origin? I send him a link to the latest event. On it. He's got holographic displays arrayed around him in a semicircle, sweeping them back and forth as he works. I accept each loop he creates and slide it into place beside my own, reviewing his work and adding my own suggestions before sending it back. We work this way for a few minutes, or maybe hours. It's hard to tell when you're in the zone. But by the time I look up, the Ka'at has moved to a different window ledge to catch the sun. I clear my throat. As far as I can tell, when I trail off, Quinn prompts. Tell me. I cast a glance around the room, but the young man and woman who were working on the system when we arrived are no longer here. I think it might have been a mistake. The last software update initiated a call to this subroutine, which calls back to the update, sending it in a circle. The launch requests were initiated by a test routine left in the same folder. Quinn's gaze goes to the door, then to Doug. Those interns installed the last update? The older man slaps his forehead. I double-checked the update, but I didn't notice the circular callback. You wouldn't have unless you reviewed their routine, and there was no reason to check that when you installed the update. I showed Doug the code. It's a simple mistake, but if you hadn't had the quasher in there, you could have had an unanticipated launch. I've written a loop that will notify you of every subroutine a new update interacts with. It should prevent this kind of thing from happening again. But that's why you need human eyes on the code. As we finish, Quinn pulls each program up on her ancient system and painstakingly types the new loops into a separate window. She could cut and paste, but like a good code jockey, she is only willing to trust what she can actually see. It's not that I don't believe in your good intentions. Sachel is 100% accurate when it comes to vetting humans. But I like to understand what I'm installing so I can fix it later. I'm done. She types another line, then sits back and swallows a gulp of coffee. Ugh, that's cold. She looks up at the windows. The sun is long gone, and the Ka'at still lays across the sill. Sassy, you want to give this one last look? The Ka'at opens one eye for a long, baleful stare, then leaps down and paces across the room. We all stop to watch the beautiful, graceful creature. She's huge, at least a meter tall at the shoulders, with thick, silky hair and a bushy tail. You're asking a cat to look at your program. Vanti's voice comes out a little choked. I've been trying to roll with this whole believe thing, but a pet who codes? Quinn smiles. I get it. I've been where you are, but Sachel is not a typical feline. She's a Hadriana Ka'at, and they have unique capabilities. Including programming? Vanti crosses her arms, her face set. She saved a lot of lives during the war. Quinn slides off the bench. She doesn't write code per se, but she understands what we want the system to do and can tell if it's correct. Don't ask me how, because I do not know. The Ka'at puts her front paws on the console and, using a carefully extended claw, manipulates the rollerball. She scrolls through everything, changing modules and files on her own. Then she meows loudly once and sits down. She found one error. Quinn waves at the screen. Go ahead and check. Module 23, line 7. Vanti and I lean over to read the screen. Aaron waits impatiently for his turn. I tap on the screen. She's right. That line needs to be fixed. Aaron nods, so I enter the proper information. But Quinn could have put that mistake in on purpose, then claimed that Ka'at found it. Vanti glares at the Ka'at, then at Quinn. I'm not sure what the point is, but easy enough to fake. The Ka'at stares at Vanti. The redhead glares back. Then she squints and taps her audio implant. She fiddles with her hollow ring and then rounds on Quinn. How are you doing that? I'm not doing anything. Quinn spreads her hands. Whatever's happening, it's all Sachel. I'm surprised she's bothering. Tony strolls closer. She frequently refuses to talk to me. I don't know why she feels communicating with you is important. You should be honored. The Ka'at is talking to you? I hazard gently. Aaron gives me a swift, skeptical glance. I shrug. Yes. Vanti's voice is barely audible. The Ka'at is talking to me. I take it cats are native to Hadriana? I raise my brows at Quinn. When she nods, I turn back to Vanty. She's an alien, not a Terran cat. She wouldn't be the first alien to talk to humans. Seraph gliders communicate with their owners, and there's the Durenti. I shiver at the thought. Vanty turns her glare on the cat. Fine, I believe in you. Now what? Did we save Christmas? My hollow ring pings. I flick the icon and Scott's hologram appears in my palm. Eugene is better. Are you ready to head home? I look helplessly at the others. I guess we did. Chapter 7. Jessian takes us back to the Reinsdyr. I close my eyes and count Christmas elves as the van whips around the corners on the way up the cliff. When we arrive at the top and shoot straight across the plain, I relax and open my eyes. The sun is setting behind us, lighting up the vast desert with red and gold. When we arrive at the homestead, the gold bits of Reinsdyr shine so brightly I have to squint, which is a good thing since I forgot to pull my goggles on before Tony opened the van door. Scott strides across the dusty parking lot to the van, arms open wide. Welcome! Come aboard for dinner! Tony and Quinn try to demur, but Scott won't take no for an answer. They finally give up and climb out of the vehicle, stopping to stare at the ship. We aren't going to fit. Quinn measures the length of the little craft with her hands. It's farther away than we realize? Tony nudges her forward, his tone doubtful. I have been on Lunesco long enough to know how far away that ship is, and it's not that far. I'd estimate it's about the same size as Lou's bigger shuttle. She wrinkles her nose. Maybe a little longer, but not as big as the Swan. And all of us would be a tight fit on the Swan, unless we're going to have dinner in the cargo hold. She squints at the ship again and shakes her head. It's bigger on the inside, Ty and I say together, then exchange a grin. Tony frowns. I've heard that quote before. Ancient TV. This time, Aaron and Vanty chime in, too. No, Tony draws the word out. I'm not familiar with that. Quinn snaps her fingers. It's that retro tube you like to watch, Tony, the show with the doctor. He nods in agreement. We climb the ramp to the airlock. Probably thanks to the natural sandblasting occurring outside, someone has closed the inner hatch. The space is normally big enough to fit 6 people comfortably, but somehow we all squeeze in, including Doug and the cat. Scott brings up the rear and slams the outer hatch closed. Then he sings the opening line from an ancient Christmas carol, Arise, shine, for thy light is come. The melody line is instantly recognizable, but the words are not. The acoustics in the tiny airlock defy logic, like most things when Scott is around. As if in response to the song, the inner hatch pops. Audio password, nice. Vanty nods approval. What language was that? Tony asks. Ancient Earthich, Scott says as he pushes the inner hatch open. Don't ask me how he got through our tightly packed group to the front end of the line. I have no idea. The airlock opens directly into the room with the Christmas tree. There was no door here when we ate dinner last night. Or was that this morning? Now that I think about it, I don't remember sleeping, but I'm not tired. Kara, Eriko, and Elodie wait for us by the fireplace. As soon as we arrive, Elodie starts passing out drinks. Based on the smell of the beverages she's handing around, she's learned Scott's magic trick of pouring different flavors from the same containers. Or maybe the cocoa urn and schnapps bottle are magical. Either way, the triangular glass she gives me holds a cold, sweet, chocolatey concoction topped with a toasted marshmallow that tastes like magic. Quinn, Tony, and Doug stare at the huge tree with their mouths open. They wander around the vast room in a daze that I vaguely remember from my first encounter with Scott. When they finally reach the fireplace, Elodie hands them a drink. Don't even bother asking how. The cat stalks across the room and gives Apollo a narrow-eyed glare. I don't remember seeing Apollo earlier, but maybe he was in Elodie's cabin. Or maybe he magically appeared. This drink is really strong. The two animals. Is Seychelle really an animal if she talks to people? The cat and the cat size each other up. Backs arching, tails erect, hair standing on end. Seychelle hisses. Apollo backs away. This could get ugly. Ty appears beside me with a hot drink and a sugar cookie. I wonder if the reindeer wrangler is any good with felines. I break a chunk off of the frosted tree and pop it into my mouth. My husband, wisely, says nothing. I kiss his cheek. I can get my own. Nope, better for me this way. He takes another bite and hands me the trunk of the tree, then pats his belly. Gotta stay shiny. Apollo lets out a tiny meow. The combatants' fur flattens and they curl up together on the rug in front of the fire. Vanty appears beside me, biting her lip. I've never seen her look so unsure. The idea of a less than 100% assured Vanty is a bit unsettling. She catches my concerned look and her expression blanks. The cat says Apollo is a distant relative. I'm not sure how that's possible since there's been no communication between Hadriana and us before now. I shake my head. Just go with it, Vanty. This is how life is when Scott's around. It's all a mystery. I offer her the last bit of the cookie. I don't like mysteries. She takes the cookie. Maybe the cookies are laced with something. She sniffs it, then licks a corner of the frosted edge. With a shrug, she tosses the piece into her mouth. Vanty eating a sugar cookie? Some might think it's a Christmas miracle, but I know better. Don't go crazy, cupcake girl. Hey, if Scott can do all the things he's done so far, then he has to have created food without consequences. Nothing on the ship should have any calories, or at least no more than we need. This is a good theory. I take the plate of cookies Ty has just found on a side table and offer them to Vanty. Load up. Scott taps the spoon against his beer glass. Did that come from the cocoa urn too? Welcome, everyone. We'll have dinner in a few minutes, but first I have some gifts. Tony's brow comes down. Gifts? I didn't know there was a gift exchange. Kara shoves Freya into his arms. Not an exchange. Santa doesn't do exchanges. She spins around and drops to a cushion on the floor beside Eriko. Tony puts Freya on his hip and makes faces at her. The baby laughs, a sound which makes everyone else smile. Quinn urges Tony to a nearby couch. You're pretty good with that, kid. He sits, shifting the child to his lap. I have a knack with him. Doug sits beside them. You two gonna have one? Quinn smacks his arm. None of your business. But no, I'm not having another one. I'm 43. Mary and Bernard carry a large red velvet bag into the room. The white fur at the top brushes against my arm as they pass, sending a little pleasant shiver down my spine. Is that the bag? It's also larger on the inside, I expect, Quinn mutters. Scott goes around the room pulling rough boxes from the bag as he stops beside each of us. He doesn't look when he grabs a package, but just reaches in and pulls out whatever comes to hand. They're all roughly the same size, about 10 centimeters on a side, wrapped in bright metallic colors with gold and silver ribbons. Even Seychelle and Apollo get gifts, although Apollo's isn't wrapped. Seychelle says he's not as smart as most Hadriana cats because the genes are too diluted by all his house cat ancestors, Vanty confides. Which makes sense, but is kind of terrifying because Apollo is way smarter than any normal house cat I've met. You are not wrong. I pull the ribbon on my gift, but stop before the bow comes undone. Are we supposed to open these now? Scott gives us a get-to-it gesture. Please, enjoy. Ribbons snap, paper tears, and a chorus of oohs and ahs follows. When the carnage is cleared, magically, of course, we take stock of what everyone has received. Freya chews on the ear of a squishy monkey toy that jingles when she shakes it. Kara and Erko gaze at the new baby hover cart with tears in their eyes. O'Neill cradles an ancient paper book with the name Arthur Conan Doyle on the cover. Tony and Quinn laugh over tickets to a popular vacation destination. Doug admires the remote control for his planetary defense system. Jessian admires a pair of fluffy green dice dangling from a string. I've been looking for some of these for the van. Aaron smiles quietly at a scale model of the Ostala hovering over his palm, complete with a tiny shuttle circling. Elodie pins a large sparkly clip to her hair, exclaiming, It's a wide-angle cam! I sniff my box of candy, savoring the rich, sweet aroma. I don't recognize the chocolatier, but Quinn assures me it's the best in the Federation. I start to open the box, but Judy appears with an identical one already open and offers it to everyone. Only Vanty hasn't opened her gift. She sits beside me with the box in her lap, her eyes a little glassy. Is she crying? Vanty doesn't cry. Has Scott broken her? Open it! Elodie starts a chant. Soon, everyone in the room has joined in. Open it! Open it! Open it! Vanty straightens her shoulders and sniffs. Fine. She glares at me. I hate being the center of attention. Then you should have ripped off the paper when the rest of us did. I lean against Ty, giving Vanty a little more space for distraction. Open it! Open it! Even the cat sits up to watch. Vanty flings up a hand and the chant cuts out. With an unexpectedly dramatic flourish, she pulls the tail of the ribbon, unraveling the bow like a magician flicking a scarf off a disappearing dove. Freed from the glittering strand, the box unfolds on its own, revealing its contents. We all stare at the tiny, fluffy ball in Vanty's lap. It shivers, unrolling from a fist-sized sphere into a palm-sized kitten. Vanty gasps and touches the tip of one pointed ear, then looks at Seychelle. The cat blinks and dips her chin in feline approval. Is that a cat? Quinn leans forward to get a better look. How did it not asphyxiate in that box? Doug whispers. Vanty lifts the tiny creature to her face, brushing her cheek against its fur. The kitten purrs. Banty looks over her new furry friend, raising both brows at Doug. You have to believe. Thank you for listening, and Happy New Year.